I'm Harper Lewis, 34 years old, living in Seattle, Washington. By day, I'm the chief financial officer of a high-end interior design firm. By night, I'm Mason's wife. The college boyfriend I once believed was the love of my life. We had been together for 11 years, married for 6. There was a time I thought nothing could ever break the bond between us. But sometimes, the beginning of the end isn't a blowout fight or some earth-shattering betrayal. It's just a text preview on a locked screen. That morning, like any other, I got up earlier than Mason. While brushing my teeth in the bathroom, I saw his iPhone light up on the sink. A message popped up from a name I didn't recognize. Can't wait for the weekend, the cabin, wine, and that pink lace set. I'm counting the hours. I froze. Not because the message was bold, but because it was real. I stood there, toothbrush in hand, foam dissolving in my mouth, feet cold against the tile. Behind the frosted glass door, I could hear water running down my husband's back as he showered, getting ready for work like it was any other day. And me? I couldn't take my eyes off the screen as it faded to black. I didn't unlock the phone. I didn't need to. In that moment, what I felt wasn't shock, it was confirmation. I had suspected it for a while. Lately, Mason had been pulling the last-minute business trip excuse, leaving me alone in the once cozy house on empty weekends. He'd started bringing his phone into the shower, something he never used to do. His laptop had a new password, and those eyes that once looked at me with warmth now only glanced past me, like I was a painting on the wall he'd long grown tired of. I used to tell myself, "Don't be paranoid, Harper. Everyone gets tired after all these years. Don't make a scene over a look." But now, I just wanted to go back in time and tell myself, stop being stupid. I washed my face, dried my hands, and did my makeup like always. My hands didn't tremble. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness, as if I had just stepped out of my own life and was watching it from the outside. When I walked out of the bathroom, I saw Mason standing in front of the bedroom mirror tying his tie. He glanced at me and smiled, just like every other morning. Maybe he hadn't realized that everything had changed the moment I read that message on his phone screen. "This weekend, I have a client seminar in Portland," he said, adjusting his collar. "I'll be home late on Sunday." I nodded. "Don't forget to bring a thick coat." "It gets cold at night there," I replied, my voice flat without emotion. I didn't ask about the message. I didn't ask who was counting the hours. I didn't want to interrupt the carefully scripted act he'd put so much effort into. Because in my mind, something else had already begun to take shape. And I wouldn't say a single word until it was finished. Mason always slept like a rock after his Thursday night tennis and 2 whiskeys. I knew that as well as I knew his fingerprint on his right index finger. That night, once Mason had passed out, the scent of whiskey and shampoo still hanging in the air, I quietly took his phone, gently tilted his hand onto the sensor. Click. The screen lit up. A chill crept down my spine, like the winter wind off the lake by the cabin where he once promised to build a balcony for us. The message about the pink lace set was just the surface. What I found was an entire secret life he'd been living, one I had no idea about. Her name was Claire Donovan, not some naive 20-something. Claire was a sales rep for a medical device company, about 38 years old, living in Tacoma. She had sharp wit, experience, and more importantly, she was married. His name came up in an older message. "Tyler will be in San Jose all week. The cabin's all ours." Tyler Donovan, her husband. I quietly Googled him, typed in his name, and there it was. His LinkedIn profile. Tyler Donovan, 41 years old, high-end and residential architect specializing in sustainable spaces, with his own firm in Bellevue. His profile picture showed a tall man, light stubble, and a tired but kind smile. I didn't sleep that night. Each message felt like a blade slicing through old memories. Every time Mason said he was going to a training in Portland. Every night I sat alone reviewing files with only the dishwasher humming in the background. The next morning I sat in front of my computer, writing and rewriting a message at least 15 times before finally sending it. "Hi Tyler, this is Harper Lewis. I believe my husband, Mason Lewis, and your wife, Claire Donovan, are having an affair. If you're open to a conversation, I can share evidence. My number is 2065557 My palms were soaked with sweat the moment I hit send. 3 hours later, my phone rang. His voice was deep and strangely calm, but there was a subtle tremor beneath it. Is this some kind of joke? I wish it were, I replied, my throat dry. I have texts, photos, and their weekend plans at the Chelan Lake cabin. A pause. What do you want to do? He asked after a long silence. I gripped the phone tighter, then spoke slowly. Would you want to meet them there with me? Before they uncork the wine or take off their coats? Tyler didn't answer right away. Then finally a long breath. Okay, let's meet first. I want to see what you know. We agreed to meet Saturday morning at a small cafe in Ellensburg, halfway between Seattle and Chelan. I arrived early, sitting in a corner booth facing the parking lot, and it took just one heartbeat to recognize Tyler when he walked in. Tall frame, light brown coat, and a stride that carried the weight of winter behind it. He sat down without small talk. I placed my phone on the table, opened the message thread between Mason and Claire, and handed it to him. With every swipe of the screen, I saw his hand tighten. When he reached the photo Claire had sent, her toes on the hardwood floor of the cabin, a floor he instantly recognized as his own design. He leaned back, eyes shut. I thought it was just work, just distance, he murmured. She never wanted to see a counselor, now I know why. After nearly an hour of conversation, Tyler said, I still have a spare key to the cabin. Claire doesn't know I kept it. I nodded. Mason thinks I'm on a business trip in Spokane this weekend. He has no idea I'm anywhere near here. Then? We'll get there first, he said, looking directly at me. But no yelling, no drama. Just let them see us. And the truth. I tightened my grip on the coffee mug and nodded. The plan came together from the shattered pieces inside both of us, the betrayed. No shouting, no chasing. Just a presence, timed perfectly, like a mirror held up to the lies they'd tried so hard to hide. We agreed to meet again Sunday morning at the cabin. They were scheduled to arrive at 6 p.m. By 10 a.m. Sunday, I was pulling up to the wooden cabin nestled among pine trees along Lake Chelan. The air was cold, but there was no snow. Everything felt clearer in this crisp morning light, the truth, the pain, and the plan we were about to carry out. Tyler was already there. His silver car sat dusted with pollen near the steps. He was inside, holding a mug of hot coffee, eyes fixed on the still water of the lake. When I walked in, he nodded. A simple, familiar gesture, as if we weren't strangers bound by betrayal. Did you sleep? He asked, his voice low and soft. I'm not sure. Maybe I closed my eyes for a few hours, I replied, setting my bag down on the wooden chair. You? No, but I'm used to sleepless nights. Architects work best in silence. We sat quietly for several minutes, not awkward, just two people quietly sorting through the wreckage inside. Then I spoke. The last time I was in this cabin was 3 years ago. Mason and I came here after one of his long business trips. This is where I lost our first baby. Tyler looked over at me, his eyes softened. Claire wanted kids too, but after 2 failed tests she stopped bringing it up. I thought it was the grief. Turns out, she had other distractions. We didn't cry. There was only the steady hum of the electric heater and a wind brushing past the trees. Do you think we're going too far? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, Tyler said. If this were revenge, maybe, but this is about bringing them face to face with reality. I nodded, like an unexpected group therapy session. We started setting up the space, not as a trap, but as a staging of truth. I wiped down the long wooden table in the living room where Claire and Mason often sat planning their so-called work weekends. Tyler brought in a bottle of red wine from his car, Claire's favorite. I set out 4 crystal glasses, the kind Mason always packed as part of his arrogant, refined taste ritual. We arranged 2 chairs facing away from the front door so they'd have no choice but to face us as they entered. The lights were adjusted to a warm amber, not too bright to provoke tension, but clear enough to catch every facial expression. How do you think they'll react? I asked as we sat down, scanning the room like we'd just finished staging a play. Tyler shook his head. Claire will cry. Mason, I'm not sure. Maybe anger, maybe begging. But I guarantee he's not ready for the fact that both of us know everything. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about ourselves. Not just as the betrayed, but as people. Stripped down behind the armor that heartbreak had forced us to wear. I told Tyler about all the times Mason skipped family gatherings, claiming client emergencies. About the Uber receipts I'd seen that originated from a residential neighborhood 40 minutes away from his office, and how I'd once convinced myself he'd just stopped at a bar with friends. Tyler shared how he once caught Claire smiling to herself while texting, only to snap her phone shut the moment he walked in. I knew something was off, he said, but I chose to trust her until you messaged me. Outside, the sky turned gray. The clock read 4:12 p.m. Less than 2 hours, I said, adjusting the last glass. Are you scared? Tyler asked. I'm not afraid of the truth, I replied. I'm only afraid I might forgive the unforgivable. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded. I'll remember that. We stepped out onto the porch, standing together as the stillness of the lake made time feel like it had stopped. 5:57 p.m. The air inside the cabin was tight, strung like a wire ready to snap. Tyler and I sat silently in the living room, facing the entrance. 2 wine glasses rested on the table beside the bottle of red Claire once called the only thing that makes a weekend feel special. On the armchair across from us sat a thick envelope filled with everything we needed. Printed messages, screenshots, credit card statements, and a voice recording of Mason's assistant casually confirming Mason doesn't have any meeting in Portland. We heard the crunch of tires on gravel in the distance. Tyler looked at me. I said nothing, just nodded. A black SUV pulled up to the steps. Mason stepped out first, leather jacket on, holding a suitcase and a gift bag. Claire followed, carrying a bouquet of pale pink tulips. They were laughing, carefree, as if arriving at some kind of honeymoon retreat. The door opened. Claire entered first, her smile freezing instantly. Mason bumped into her back, then looked up. Just in time for our eyes to meet. Mason dropped the gift bag. Inside was a bottle of champagne. It rolled across the hardwood floor and shattered. The strong smell of alcohol filled the room. Claire's mouth fell open, the flowers slipped from her hands, the petals scattered wildly, like a visual metaphor of what had just happened, an illusion blown apart. Welcome to your weekend getaway, I said, my voice light as a breeze. We've prepared wine, chairs, and the truth. Mason stood, frozen, lips tightly pressed. Claire stepped back half a pace, her eyes darting to Tyler for help. Harper, it's not what you think, Mason began. It's not? I tilted my head. Then what about the texts about the cabin, the wine receipts, and the Uber confirmation to her neighborhood? Are those not what I think either? Tyler stood. And what about me, Claire? You said you were going to a seminar with a female coworker. You even texted, "Good night, miss you," before turning off your phone. Was I imagining that too? Claire broke down, covering her face. Tyler, please, don't. No, he said, his voice steely. Don't what? Don't stand here and face you? Don't hear the truth? Don't watch my wife cheating in the very house I designed with my own hands? I stood and took the envelope from the chair beside me, placing it on the table. I didn't come here empty-handed, I said, my voice steady. I spent the last 48 hours gathering everything. Call history, messages, photos from the company wedding Claire and Mason both attended. The one Mason told me was just with the guys. Claire turned pale. Mason grabbed the envelope, flipped through a few pages, then threw it down after only seconds, his eyes bloodshot. You were spying on me? I looked at him directly. I was verifying the truth. Because I'd been suspicious for too long, and because you were so careful, I had to be. Claire collapsed into a chair, hair disheveled, tears running down her cheeks. Tyler didn't move toward her. He turned away, staring out the window like he needed air. Claire, how long? He asked, still not looking at her. 7 months, she whispered. I felt a tight knot in my chest. Mason clenched his hands, stepping toward me as if to explain. Harper, I was wrong. But that doesn't mean I stopped loving you. I stepped back. If the love you're talking about is the kind that brings another woman to the same place where I lost our child, then you can keep it." The room fell into silence. I looked at Mason one last time. "You can choose to leave now or sit and hear this through, but if you think there's any chance for forgiveness, then you've completely misunderstood who I am." Tyler looked at Claire, then turned to me. "I need some air." I nodded. "So do I." We stepped out onto the porch, leaving behind two people breaking apart in the ruins of their lives. Outside, Lake Chelan was still calm like it had been that morning. But for me, the wind had started to rise. We returned to the living room in silence. Claire and Mason were still seated, neither looking at the other. The air was thick, heavy, with things left unsaid. I pulled a chair across from Mason. Tyler sat beside me, staring straight at Claire. No one spoke. Not until I placed the second folder on the table did the atmosphere begin to shift. "Mason," I said, eyes fixed on him, "have you ever told Claire why we've kept separate finances for the past 6 years?" He stiffened. "Harper, that's—" "I'll tell her," I cut him off. "Claire, maybe you didn't know, but Mason once racked up over $42,000 in gambling debt back in 2015. His parents quietly paid it off to avoid damaging his career. After that, I had to keep separate accounts, not because of distrust, but because I saw firsthand how much he could hide." Claire turned to Mason, stunned. "You never told me that." "Because it has nothing to do with what's happening today," Mason snapped. "Doesn't it?" I tilted my head, eyes locked on him. "You cheated on me and tried to justify it by saying I was too busy, too cold. But you forgot to tell your mistress that I've been the one carrying the financial load, paying this cabin's mortgage every month, while you were lying and playing cards with your old friends in Tacoma." Mason lowered his head, saying nothing. Tyler now turned to Claire. "And you? You told me the bank delayed the roof repair loan, but the truth is, you transferred nearly $10,000 to a rehab center in Spokane. The recipient? Jackson Donovan. That's your brother, right?" Claire looked overwhelmed, her face pale. "I didn't want you to worry." "No," Tyler said, voice steady but cold. "You didn't want to share the truth. You've been living 2 lives, one with me, one with Mason. And the worst part is, both were built on secrets." The room fell silent. I nodded slightly, then said, "This is the only thing you two have in common. You've never been honest with either of us, and even with each other, it's just polished versions of yourselves." Claire burst into tears. "I never meant for it to go this far." "But you let it," I replied. "I don't know what hurts more, being betrayed or realizing the person who betrayed you doesn't even have the courage to admit they were wrong." Mason looked at me, eyes red. "I'm sorry, Harper. Truly sorry." I looked back at him and said calmly, "Sorry doesn't change the truth. And love, if it ever existed, can't save a marriage that's rotted from the roots." Tyler stood up, no longer angry, just exhausted. "Claire," he said, "do you know what hurts the most? It's that you never once considered telling me the truth, that you thought I wasn't worthy of being trusted with what you were carrying." Claire said nothing, her face drenched in tears. I stood as well. "I didn't come here to get love back. I came here to reclaim the truth. And the truth is, Mason, you don't love me. You love the validation of being admired. Claire, you don't love Tyler. You love the feeling of escaping a life you didn't have the courage to face." I looked at both of them one last time, then said slowly, "Love isn't enough. Trust, respect, and honesty are the foundation of any real relationship. Without those, love is just a beautiful illusion." Just as I finished, Claire suddenly stood, her hand gripping the edge of the chair. Her eyes were red, not just with shame but something else, a mix of fear and confusion. "There's something I haven't said," she said, voice shaking. Tyler turned to her, brow furrowed. "Again?" Claire swallowed hard, her eyes briefly flicking to Mason, then landing on me. I am pregnant." The living room went completely still. The ticking of the wooden wall clock echoed loudly, each second slicing through the air. Mason jumped up. What did you say? Claire nodded, lips trembling. I know it's not the right time, but I found out just last week. I was going to tell Mason this weekend, at the cabin, but Tyler stood frozen, his voice barely above a whisper. Is the baby mine? Claire turned to him, eyes glistening. Yes, I'm sure. Mason and I always used protection. I went numb. For a few seconds my mind went blank, then quickly flooded with a storm of emotion. No one had prepared for this. No one expected that a confrontation would be overturned by the arrival of an unborn life. Mason stared at Claire wide-eyed. You're saying you're pregnant with his child? Don't call him his, Claire snapped, showing the first hint of composure since she entered. I was wrong to cheat, but at least I never lied to you about how I felt. Tyler turned away, fists clenched. I looked at Mason. He couldn't speak. His furious expression shifted to something unrecognizable. Shock? Humiliation? Or just complete emptiness? I took a deep breath and stood. Looks like we've all had enough for today, I said, my eyes still locked on Mason. And since everything is out in the open, I won't drag this out. I opened my bag and pulled out a small folder, placing it on the table next to him. This is the divorce petition and all the financial documentation I've prepared. I've transferred our joint assets into a separate account, legally. Everything's been verified by my attorney. I have nothing to hide. Mason still didn't respond. You can review it or refuse to sign it right now. But I'm not changing my decision. Claire sat back down, instinctively holding her stomach. Tyler turned to her, voice low but controlled. I'll need time to process all of this, but if you're keeping the baby, I'll take responsibility. The child isn't at fault. Claire nodded, choking back tears. I know. And thank you for still being able to say that. I looked at them both, then turned to Mason. I don't know if you still have something to say, but if you do, now's the time. He raised his head, eyes red and weary. Harper, all of this, it's not worth ending everything over. We had so many good things. You're right, I nodded. We had so many good things. But the fact that you chose to trade it all away for some vague emotional thrill with someone who's not even honest with her own husband means I have to protect the rest of my life. Tyler stood, polite but firm. I'll head to the car. Harper, if you need anything after this, call me. I think we still have a few conversations left to finish. I nodded, grateful for his calm presence. Claire stepped toward me, hesitant. I know I have no right to apologize, but I truly never thought it would go this far. I looked directly at her, my eyes no longer angry, just clear. The most dangerous people aren't the obviously bad ones. They're the ones who keep telling themselves they're good even while they're lying. She froze for a moment, then turned away. I picked up the folder, pulled a pen from my coat pocket and signed the bottom left corner of each page. When I put the pen down, I felt lighter than I had in years. Lighter because I no longer had to hold together a marriage that had already rotted. Lighter because I no longer had to pretend to trust someone who didn't deserve it. I looked up at Mason, the man who had once been my entire youth, the dream of a family I used to believe in. Good luck, I said. You're going to need more than that. Tyler and I left the cabin around 9 p.m. Inside, Mason sat motionless in his chair, and Claire curled in the corner of the room, holding her stomach like the only thing left to cling to was the life she had just admitted was growing inside her. No one saw us out. No one needed to. We walked in silence, the crunch of dried leaves underfoot reminding us that a chapter had officially closed. Tyler opened the car door for me, then got into the driver's seat. Before starting the engine, he glanced over and asked softly, "Do you want to eat something? I know a little place in downtown Chelan that stays open late. Nothing fancy, but their chicken soup's pretty decent." I laughed. A hoarse, unexpected laugh, but a real one. Yeah, let's eat. I'm starving. We sat side by side in a small diner, the warm yellow light casting a gentle glow over the old wooden table. Neither of us tried to analyze what had just happened. Instead, we talked about quieter things, like how Tyler once considered quitting architecture to go to pastry school, or how I had dreamed of opening a bookstore cafe in Santa Barbara, but let it go after Mason called the idea unrealistic. After dinner, we said goodbye with a light handshake and a silent nod. We didn't become lovers. But that night, I knew I had gained something even more grounding. A friend. Someone who had walked with me through the darkest night. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my small beach house in Port Townsend, holding a cup of hot tea, watching the waves crash against the shore. The divorce had been finalized in less than 2 months thanks to my meticulous preparation. Documents, evidence, and clearly defined assets. Mason didn't fight it, maybe because he knew the longer it dragged out, the more he stood to lose. I received the majority of the assets, including a one-time buyout for the old cabin, which I later sold back to Mason. I didn't need to keep a place filled with ghosts. Mason lost his promotion opportunity at the financial firm. His boss, Bisi, a strict but fair woman, found out about what happened through an internal company event. No one said anything officially, but gradually he was removed from big projects. From the next executive director, he became the guy overseeing Team B temporarily. Claire gave birth last week. Tyler texted me, "Baby's here, healthy, a girl. Emotions are all over the place, but we're trying." Attached was a photo. A tiny hand wrapped around Claire's finger, and Tyler looking into the camera with a softness I'd never seen before. I don't know if they got back together as a couple, but clearly, they're learning how to be honest. With themselves and each other, even if late. As for me, I live alone in a new house by the sea. It's not far from Seattle, but peaceful enough that I can hear the wind every morning. I changed jobs. No longer a CFO, but a freelance financial advisor working on my own schedule. No more packed meetings. No more midnight email chains. I've also learned how to unplug, how to rest, how to breathe. Tyler and I still keep in touch. Not often, but consistently. Sometimes it's a quick Happy Thanksgiving. Sometimes it's just, saw a little French-style cabin in Oregon, made me think of you, beautiful. And sometimes it's a 15-minute call, just to ask, are you doing okay? I don't need anything more. We walked through one of the longest nights of our lives together. And even though neither of us says it, I know, we're friends. A kind of friendship that needs no labels, just a look to understand each other. That evening I sat on the front porch, holding my favorite book with a small music player beside me softly playing a Debussy symphony. I didn't think about Mason anymore. No more pain, no more regret, only a quiet peace, like the autumn sea. I had survived what once felt impossible. And most importantly, I had found myself again. One early morning in March, just as the sun rose over the distant pine trees, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because of an alarm clock, not for a meeting or a packed schedule, simply because I wanted to enjoy the early moment of the day that I had missed for years. The light streamed through the glass windows, spilling across the living room of my small home on the bay in Port Townsend. The space was bathed in a soft golden hue, reflecting off the teacup in my hand, making everything feel strangely clear. I sat down in my familiar armchair, draped a light knit blanket over my legs, and gazed out at the sea, gently lapping in the distance. My heart no longer felt heavy, and most importantly, I no longer felt like the woman left behind. I had divorced and started a new life. Mason had once been a significant part of my world. But he wasn't the destination. He came into my life to teach me an expensive lesson, to wake me up and help me realize that trust should never be given to someone who doesn't know how to protect it. Love doesn't last when honesty is missing, and blind sacrifice only makes us forget our own worth. For years I tried to be a good wife, successful at work, gentle in conversations, forgiving of flaws. But what did I get in return? A marriage filled with betrayal. A husband who no longer looked at me like a partner, but like someone planning his escape without being caught. Did it hurt? Of course. But the pain no longer drowned me. It had brought me back to shore. I had found myself more than ever before. I was no longer the woman sitting alone in the car silently crying after realizing her husband changed his password. No longer blaming herself. Maybe I wasn't soft enough. When he avoided holding her at night. no longer clutching a coffee mug each morning, just to hear his words while feeling completely numb inside. I am steady now, clear, alert, and strong enough to walk away from anyone who no longer deserves a place in my life. I remember the last time I saw Mason. It was at a financial charity event in Seattle. He stood across the room with a glass of wine watching me from a distance. He looked different, thinner, quieter. As I walked past him, he softly called, "Harper." I turned. "Hello. You look..." "Well," he said, hesitating. "I am well," I nodded. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I smiled. "I know. But you don't have to say it. Because that's the past. And I've chosen to live in the present." He nodded and stepped back. For the first time, I saw him as small. Every morning in my new home, I open all the windows to let the sunlight in. I keep pots of lavender along the porch and grow herbs just outside the kitchen. I started picking up what I once abandoned. An unfinished manuscript, a few pages of journaling, a letter to my 25-year-old self. Naive but full of dreams. I began offering financial counseling for divorced women. Not as a cold expert spouting numbers, but as someone who has lived it, who understands the fear and loss that come with starting over. They trust me. And I know why. Because I don't just speak with reason, but with a heart that's been broken and carefully rebuilt. Tyler still keeps in touch. These days he's busy with his baby, but once in a while, he sends a message. "Nora rolled over today. Her smile looks just like Claire's." I'm happy for them. Not because they erased the pain, but because they learned how to face it and heal together. As for me, I'm not looking for new love. I'm not rushing into a relationship just to fill a void. I'm learning to love myself first. Something I had forgotten for years. One weekend afternoon, I drove along the coastal road, playing an old playlist Mason used to call Too Sentimental. The music filled the car. "Dog Days Are Over" by Florence Welch. I smiled as the wind swept through my hair, not because the past had disappeared, but because I'd gone far enough from it to look back without hurting. I used to think losing someone you love was the end. But it's not. It's just the end of something that no longer served you, so you can begin something better. And if someone were to ask me now, "Harper, do you regret anything?" I would answer without hesitation. I don't. Because some people come into our lives not to stay, but to teach us how to leave at the right time. My story isn't a tragedy. It's a journey of rebirth. From a betrayed wife, I've learned to stand back up, to heal, and to love myself again. I no longer resent the past nor seek revenge. Instead, I choose peace and a life I own. Every morning in my new home is a reminder. Sometimes, loss clears the way for something better. And I'm grateful I had the courage to walk away when it mattered most. What do you think of Harper's journey? If it were you, would you forgive or walk away like she did? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about love, family, and life.